So this is the second part of our first book review, How Basketball Can Save the World by David Hollander. If you didn't watch the part 1, I'll link it in the description. So let's jump into the second part. Take care. Basketball is arguably the most inclusive game on the planet. Why? Because anyone, anywhere can play. There are no financial, geographic, or cultural barriers that can stop you from picking up a ball and shooting it at a hoop. And this simplicity makes basketball not just a sport, but also a bridge. A bridge that connects people, regardless of where they come from or what they have. Again, all you need is a ball, a hoop, or something that resembles one, and a little bit of space. In cities like Manila in the Philippines, kids play on sidewalks, using crates as hoops. In Nigeria, kids play on dirt courts with bare feet and homemade balls. The creativity and resourcefulness prove that basketball belongs to everyone. In the previous principle, we discussed that basketball's accessibility has allowed it to spread across the globe, from playgrounds to professional leagues. NBA stars like Giannis Antetokounmpo and Hakeem the Dream started on simple courts with very little resources. They had no professional training and they didn't have any access to state-of-the-art facilities. Giannis, for example, he grew up in Greece, often sharing shoes with his brothers so they could take turns playing. Hakeem played barefoot on dirt courts in Nigeria, honing his skills long before he became an NBA champion. These stories show us that basketball doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care how much money you have or where you come from. If you love the game and you work hard, you have a place on the court. One thing that I like about basketball is that it thrives in public spaces. Playgrounds, blacktops, community courts are free and open to anyone who shows up. Places like Rucker Park in Harlem or the Cage in New York City are legendary. They have been the proving ground for some of the greatest players since history, but they are also places where anyone, regardless of skill, age, or background, can play. These public courts are communities. They are places where people can connect, compete, and grow together. Basketball becomes a common language that brings people from all walks of life onto the same court. David Hollander argues that basketball is a model for how world should work. Imagine if other aspects of life, like education, healthcare, and any opportunity that you can think of, were as simple and as accessible as basketball. I don't know if I said this enough, but basketball doesn't care where you come from, what you do, who you are. If you can play, you can play. It's a game that breaks barriers, open doors, proving that an opportunity should be available to everyone. If we carry the same mindset into the real world, removing barriers and creating access, we can unlock potential everywhere. Basketball was born in 1891 during a time of change and upheaval. It was a game for everyone. James Naismith invented basketball at YMCA, a space created to include people from all walks of life. From the start, it became a refuge for the outsiders, immigrants, the poor, and people pushed to the margins of society. Basketball thrived in urban neighborhoods, where space was limited and opportunities were few. It gave kids growing up in immigrant and working class communities something powerful, a place to play, a place to belong, and a place to dream. From its very beginning, it has always embraced those who feel left out, forgotten, or othered. The game doesn't care about your background, your status, or where you come from. On the courts, everyone has a chance to belong. Allen Iverson, from the streets of Hampton, Virginia, brought his grit, swagger, and authenticity to the NBA. He refused to conform and gave hope to millions of kids who felt that they didn't fit in, and he made braids and streetwear popular in NBA. He somehow represented something bigger. He represented that basketball gives outsiders a way in. It's a game that turns struggle into strength and isolation into community. Basketball has always been more than just a game. That's what all we do is about. It's been a platform for justice and inclusion. In 1960s, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Russell stood on the front lines of civil rights movements. They used their voices and their platforms to fight for a better, more inclusive world. Today, WNBA players like Maya Moore and Brittany Griner carry on that legacy. They've shown that basketball can be a tool for advocating for those who are left behind. Whether it's racial injustice, gender equality, or LGBT inclusion, basketball has always opened its doors to those who feel othered and empowered them to lead the change. Basketball isn't exclusive. It's not for elite. It's a game for masses. On playgrounds, in schools, or on community grounds, basketball brings people together. It creates spaces where age, race, gender, and background doesn't matter. What matters is the game itself and the connection it builds. In a world where so many people left isolated and are lonely, basketball offers us a model for inclusion. It shows that no matter who you are, you have a place to belong. Basketball's message is very simple but meaningful. There is room for everyone. Imagine if society worked the same way. If we build communities where everyone, especially those who feel like outsiders, had the opportunity to thrive. Basketball teaches us diversity, strength. It's what makes a team great, and it's what can make the world even better. Basketball isn't just a sport. I think I said that enough times already in this video. But for the 10th principle, I'd argue that basketball is a canvas for creativity. Basketball is a game where the imagination isn't just encouraged, but it's necessary. Players dream up new moves, new plays, and new ways to win. On the basketball, anything feels possible. It thrives on creativity. Unlike other sports with rigid formations and stop and start play, basketball flows. It's a constant dance of movement, improvisation, and invention. Players are free to imagine and reimagine what the game can be. MJ dances midair, Kyrie puts the ball on a string, White Chocolate passes with his elbow, Magic Johnson doesn't even need to look past with his anything. Basketball rewards players who think differently, who see possibilities where others see limits. That's the power of imagination. Basketball is the game of dreams because it invites you to imagine. One thing that I remember doing was having this imaginary shot clock when I was playing basketball on my driveway. And when I made it, I was like, yes, I was built for this. I won the game for my team. But when I missed it, I made up some rule in my mind that magically enabled me to shoot another 3-second shot. And I did that until I make it. So basketball teaches us to dream, to innovate. Even making up rules like I did when I was a kid, it encourages us to believe that anything is possible. It's a game where limits are meant to be broken and where imagination turns into extraordinary. If we bring the same creativity to our lives, to our communities, and our world, we can find solutions to problems, create new possibilities, and reimagine what's possible. Again, I'm saying basketball is more than just a game. It's a community. It doesn't matter where you come from, what you look like, or what language you speak. And I think I said that enough times already too. But when you step onto the court, you become part of something bigger. Unlike family, where you're born into relationships, or work, where roles are assigned to us, basketball gives us a choice. We choose to belong, to connect, and to build something together. Basketball courts are one of the most democratic places in the world. You show up, you play, and you're part of the community. In public courts, you don't need any invitation. There is no cost to entry. All you need is a ball and willingness to play. The game itself brings people together. Friends, strangers, teammates, creating trust, relationships, and a shared purpose. David Hollander describes this as a community you choose. On the court, you can find connections. You can be a part of something, even if you feel alone or excluded elsewhere. Let's dive a bit deeper into pickup basketball because I find it extremely interesting. So, you show up to a court, not knowing anyone, but within minutes you're sharing passes, setting screens, and calling each other teammates. And to do this, you don't even need to speak with them. You just play the game. By the end of the game, those strangers have become a part of your community. There is something very powerful about this. Basketball creates instant connections. You don't need to know someone's name, job, or background. You just need to trust them to play the game together. Basketball is also a game of inclusion. It builds communities where everyone has a place. Programs like wheelchair basketball give athletes with disabilities an opportunity to compete and belong. There are mixed gender leagues and LGBT programs. In refugee camps and underserved neighborhoods, basketball becomes a safe space, a way to connect, a way to heal. The game doesn't ask who you are or where you come from. It only asks you to show up and play. That's why basketball is so powerful. It brings together people who might never have crossed paths otherwise. In a time where people feel isolated and disconnected, we have the power to choose connection, to build communities we trust, support, and include each other, just like on the court. In basketball, leadership isn't about positions, titles, or who's the loudest. It's about stepping up when the moment calls for it. Basketball teaches us that leadership is fluid. Anyone can lead at any time in their own way. Leadership in basketball isn't reserved for the star player or the team captain. It's nearly always situational. Sometimes it's the player who takes the shot when the team needs it most. Sometimes it's the one who sacrifices setting screens or playing tough defense so the team can succeed. Other times it's someone who encourages the team on the bench, bringing energy and holding others accountable. The leadership is not fixed. It moves, it flows. It's about recognizing what the team needs and stepping up to provide it. Take 2015 Finals MVP Andre Iguodala. He wasn't the star on that team. He often came from bench. But when his team needed it most, he played lockdown defense on LeBron James and became the MVP due to his actions. Robert Horry, as known as Big Shot Bob, one of the best roles players in recent history. He was not the star on any team he was in, but he stepped up in clutch, making shots, changing NBA history for a couple of NBA franchises. Maybe that's why they called him the Big Shot Bob. Think about the most influential leader in basketball history, Michael Jordan. Even he had to give up his leadership and pass to Paxson to win the 93 championship. He had to let somebody else shine because it was the right thing to do. Basketball's model of leadership is very unique. It's not about hierarchy or status. David Hollander argues that this fluid model of leadership is exactly what the world needs. In businesses, communities, and families, leadership shouldn't be about rank. It should be about action, adaptability, and stepping up when it counts. If we embrace leadership as something shared, adaptable, and action-oriented, we can solve problems, build stronger teams, and create a better world. And the final principle. Basketball reminds us the power of joy, creativity, and fun. In a world that often feels serious, stressful, and overwhelming, play is something we all need to reconnect with ourselves, with others, and with what matters most. At its heart, basketball is a game, and all games are meant to be played. When you step onto the court, it doesn't matter whether you're a kid in a driveway or an NBA all-star. For that moment, the pressures of life fade away, and you are free to play. Basketball creates a space for joy. The feeling of hitting a shot that you practice for hours. The laughter of friends sharing a game on a summer afternoon. David Hollander reminds us play isn't just about having fun. It's about being human. It's about exploring, experimenting, and connecting in ways that bring out the best in us. And one might think that it's a luxury. It's not. It's a necessity. In a world obsessed with productivity, competition, and results, we've lost the sight of what play can do for us. Play relieves stress. It brings laughter and lightness to our lives. It sparks creativity. It frees us to experiment, take risks, and think differently. It allows us to bond with others without any pressure or judgment. When we play, we remember what it's like to be human. We remember that joy, curiosity, and connection are just as important as the achievement. When we allow ourselves to play, to move freely, to laugh, to experiment without fear, we rediscover what it means to be alive. We reconnect with people around us and with a sense of joy that the world desperately needs. So David Hollander gives us 13 guiding principles inspired by basketball. They are more than ideas. They are tools for imagining what's possible. Basketball isn't just a game. It's a philosophy. It's an ism. It's a model for building a better, more connected, more joyful world. I want to finish this video on a high note. Again, this is a story from David, and I think this was not in the book, but I heard him talk about this in an NBA conference, which I will link in the description. Did you know that basketball has a saint? I'm not talking about MJ or LeBron, a literal saint. I'm going to butcher the name. If you're Italian, I do apologize in advance. Poretta Terme, a small town in central Italy who's passionate about basketball. This is the place where our story takes place. There is a small hillside sanctuary in the handsome town, and within that sanctuary, there is a chapel. And within that chapel, there is a window, a basketball-shaped window, and there is a shrine to basketball. People all over the world come here to wish for a championship, for a better shot, or healed meniscus. So the villagers were frustrated because they had made a petition to the Vatican to have their local Madonna recognized as the first ever patron saint of basketball, and their petition was rejected. So New York Times picked this story up, and Hollander was like, that's interesting, let me see what I can make out of this. By the way, I'm going to link this story below. It's so fascinating. The church is literally a small basketball memorabilia museum. They have signed jerseys from WNBA stars, MJ, Kobe, and I think even the Boston Celtics sent a letter to that chapel for before their 2023 championship. Anyways, so back to David. He flew the priest into one of his lectures and asked, Father, what can I do for you? And the priest was like, I don't know. And at the end of the day, David had 157 students in his class, and he assigned them a simple task. He asked them to write in a single sentence, why does basketball deserve its own saint? Then he put this in a letter, and to whom you might ask, he sent this letter to Pope. Then some way, somehow, the Italian media picks this letter up, and they publish the letter in, I think, La Repubblica. It's like the New York Times of Italy, I think. Anyway, so they released this letter in March 2022. April 12th, Good Friday 2022, Pope recognized the first patron saint of basketball. But why? Why would Pope do something like this? Why not soccer? It's much more popular in the Catholic world, and it's much more popular in Italy. I think he did it. He did it because he knew it was time for something new. What have we been doing so far? Where it has taken us? Are the leaders of the world really changing themselves and really changing the world? Why there are still issues of race, gender, and discrimination, and so on? There are so many unresolved issues. And me personally, I am more on the optimistic side. I really do believe we can solve these issues. Focusing solely on basketball and the principles might sound out of reach. And in fact, I know it's out of reach. But still, the game I love playing, the game I love watching, basketball, it can save the world. Thank you for watching my video. I'm back, and on this channel, I'm planning to dive deep into the world of sports culture, history, and business. podcasts. Every week, I plan to bring you the latest buzz from the sports world, breaking down how the game shapes us, the big stories, and the moment that define our culture. So, if you like these type of videos, hit subscribe and join me on Iceberg, where it's all about the game. Take care.